All right. This is a test. So we will see what happens. I don't really know if I'm live or not, but this is the point of the test. If you haven't heard, I will soon be starting a live show. And it'll be on YouTube, maybe also on Facebook, but I don't know because we're testing. And I don't have all my camera angles set up and all that sort of stuff, but I was like, I don't need all of that to try a test. So that's what this is. I think I'm live. I actually did this about 5 minutes ago and talked for 5 or 6 minutes only to realize I'm not actually live. But anyway, this is a test, and I don't have anything prepared to chat about because it is just a test. And I guess I am live because there's a couple people here, so that's cool. Let me tell you first who I am. I mean, my thought is that if you're watching this right now, you probably know who I am, but in case you don't, and you're just popping into random lives on the internet. My name is Elizabeth Benton. I am the host of the Primal Potential podcast. I have been podcasting since before it was cool to be a podcaster. I've been podcasting since 2014. So almost 11 years, which is really, really, really hard to believe. But we're changing it up. We're still going to be going with the podcast. Nothing's going to change there, but we're adding a live show on YouTube, and I'm super excited about it. This isn't it, but I mean, this is kind of what it'll be like. This is just a test because I really needed to be able to press the button and see what happens. And you can't press the button and see what happens if you don't press the button. So I came out before I've got a webinar with my consistency course later. And I was like, you know what? Instead of knocking out a couple of items on my to-do list, we're just going to test this live thing. The reason that I am doing this live show. So like I said, I've been podcasting for many, many years and I love it. And I don't want that to stop and I don't want that to go away. It is near and dear to my heart and one of my most favorite things. But there's something about not only being on video, but also being live that I think is really needed right now. Mary's here. Hey, Mary, she gave me 5 stars. I appreciate that. At least I know I'm live and it works. I know what happens when I press the button. I wanted to change things up and add this. I'm not trying to take anything away from the podcast, but rather have this be additive. And the reason it feels like the right thing to do right now is that with this massive influx of new information, we have so much information at our fingertips. I think a lot of people feel more isolated than ever and less supported than ever, which is wild, right? That we can have anybody anywhere essentially keeping us company virtually. But one of the pitfalls of this information accessibility is that then we're on our own to sort of figure it all out on our own. And what maybe 10 years ago was a manageable task now feels really burdensome. And it begs the question, like, how do I know who to trust in this sea of voices out there? And I don't know about you. I'm sure that not everybody feels the way that I feel about this, but for me, one of the ways that I decide who I trust is who I have a real relationship with. And for me, that means while I love being able to hit record on my podcast at 5 a.m. or 9 p.m. when I'm in my pajamas and looking like a bridge troll, that's my husband's term for me. It's loving, but I love that. But it leaves a big gap in terms of our ability to connect. And so I think I said this, maybe I said this when I thought I was live, but I wasn't. Once I go live with the live show and I figure out, what all the buttons do and all of that, I'm going to add a call-in number. So that's something that's going to happen here in the next few weeks. We'll start this very regular live show where you can see me and you can ask questions in real time. Like if you're one of the people that just so happens to have stumbled upon this test right now, you can put a question in the comments and I can see it in real time. And I think that does a lot for our trust and our connection. But I want to add in the call-in option, not just for you, but for anybody who hears that, because it's such a powerful thing to hear somebody ask a question that you're like, hey, me too. Hey, that's my struggle too. Hey, that answer really helped me with this thing that I'm going through and I never would have thought to ask about it. So I want to create those opportunities. And I'm very, very, very excited about it. So if you just stumbled upon here, hello, I'm just chit-chatting and testing out this functionality because it is very new to me. And if you've ever worked with me before, you know that I joke that for having a fairly tech business, I'm not a tech person, but we're just figuring it out. And I think that's such an important lesson, right? Hey, Nicole. Nicole says, I love your podcast. Been listening for years. Live show announcement was an answer to prayer. You know what? Thank you for saying that, Nicole. It was an answer to prayer for me too. It really was because I've been in this place, and if you've been listening for years, you know this, Nicole. And hey, Lindsay, it was an answer to prayer for me too because my business has shifted a lot in the last few years, and I've shifted a lot in the last few years, not just becoming a mom, but yeah, I guess largely becoming a mom, and that the way that that changes my experience in life, the way that changes my availability for business, the way that that changes what I want. And one of the things for me, as much as I think that we all need connection in this information overload, and we need to know who we can trust, and we need to find ourselves in the content, not just have cookie cutter content that applies to everybody, but the ability to have some dialogue so that we can find ourselves in it and address our circumstances and needs in it. But I wanted and needed the connection too. Things that really worked for me in business 6-7 years ago haven't worked the same for me in terms of my heart and my needs and my connection. So I'm very, very, very pumped to make this shift. Lindsay says, nice to see your face. Loves the podcast and the book. Mary says, have to go, but can't wait for this new venue. Well, I can't wait either. And like I said, this is just a test. I wanted to hop on here and just see what happens when I press the button. But to give you guys a sense of what is coming, I want to go live on YouTube, and it looks like on Facebook too, at least once a week. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions. For example, today on the podcast, I think it was episode 1285. If you're new to the podcast, it's called Primal Potential. And yes, we don't just have 1,200 some odd episodes. We have like almost 2,000 episodes because there's lots of series that we did that we didn't number traditionally. Anyway, so the episode that I did today, 1285, was about this autoimmune anti-inflammatory diet protocol that I'm doing. I want to go live and be like, hey, if you listened, what do you want to know? What questions do you have? And sure, you've always been able to email me and ask those questions, but I think that having sort of a community discussion around that would be so helpful. What do you do about breakfast? And, what did you have for dinner tonight? Or what changes have you noticed? Or Elizabeth, you did that episode 2 weeks ago. Where are you at with it now? Are you still doing it? What have you noticed? Is it worth it? Who would you recommend it for? I just think that would be really, really powerful. And then there are things that come up day to day that maybe aren't ever going to make it into the podcast because they're just little anecdotes. But here's the thing. I know they're so valuable, and I don't want to just not share them because I don't feel like putting out a 2-minute podcast episode. But an example came up today. So I have this hydroponic grower that my in-laws gave me for Christmas. I want to say like a year ago Christmas. And I didn't do anything with it last year. The kids were still kind of young. If you're not familiar with my family, I have twins who are 2.5, and then I have a 3.5-year-old boy. The twins are identical girls, Charlie and Piper. Roman is a boy. He's 3.5. And we started the seeds Friday, maybe, just so today's Monday. We started the seeds 3 or 4 days ago. And a couple of them are starting to sprout. And as I'm talking with my 3.5-year-old about it, the past couple of days, he's like, nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. You know where this is going, right? But then today, we see a sprout and it's growing. And yet there's others, I think we have maybe 13 things in this hydroponic grower. Only 3 of them have sprouted. And he says, well, the other ones aren't doing anything. And it just reminded me that we have to stay patient. And more importantly, we have to stay consistent when it looks like nothing is happening, because that's not the same thing as nothing happening. In fact, every choice and every second, something is happening. But if we operate with this expectation that it's always going to be something we can visualize, we're screwed. It's not going to work. So things like that come up that are powerful reminders that might just be the encouragement that you need to hear. on a given day, or just the fact that you had a forum to ask a question when you had a question so you could get an answer and get unstuck, and you maybe wouldn't have gone to the trouble to email me or to direct message me on Instagram or anything like that. This is just going to be a fun forum for that. So the ability to comment will be there and live, as well as the ability to call in. We're going to give that a few weeks because I want to figure this whole thing out first. But my goal is to go live at least once a week. I really want to be doing it more than that, like 3 times a week, but we're going to walk before we run. I practice what I preach, and I'm all for small change that we build on. But I just wanted to pop on here and test it out. And we did that so I can check the box. Thanks to those of you who commented so I could see how that works. I was like, gosh, how am I going to see the comments? And now I know. So it just goes to show. I joked that I don't love tech things, and that starting a live show and using all this new to me software and new to me hardware, for a while I was like, well, I can't do it because I don't know how to do it. But we can always take the next step. So if there's something that you've been wanting to do and you've been saying, well, I just don't know how to do it, you can always take just the next step. You don't have to know all of it. And the very best teacher is experience. I kept thinking, I don't even know how to go live. I don't know where I'm going to monitor comments. I don't know where they're going to pop up and if I'm going to find them, or if anybody is going to automatically show up on Facebook. Or, you know how I figured it out? In action. And the same thing is true for you. All right, I'm going to wrap this up because this was just a test. I'm so glad that it worked, and I'm very genuinely pumped about all that is to come. So if you haven't yet, go over to YouTube and subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss the live show, because it's going to be starting very, very soon. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.